hop right into the fire, boys. It's college football playoff talk time. Big storylines here. Everyone, Florida State got put out, Alabama in. Let's start out with this. We'll start out with the calm one. Did they get the first three right?
Yes, they got the first three right. I think it's questionable whether even Texas should have jumped Florida State, in my opinion, because, and we'll get into the Florida State controversy later, but
Yep.
Texas has had some trouble with teams, but pretty much every team other than Michigan has had trouble with teams. Michigan did just have trouble with Maryland. So, but pretty much it's only been Michigan and Georgia until the last few weeks where both of those teams have had, obviously Georgia just lost and Michigan had trouble with Maryland, but still won. So,
yeah, I think the biggest one that like no one's really talking about is Texas. I feel like everyone's really just wrote them in regardless, and it's like it's like, oh, what's the reason? They're like, oh, they beat Bama. It's like, okay,
it's a good win.
I mean,
right?
it is a good win, but it's interesting. Like that's one of their only reasonings. I mean, obviously the Big 12 championship helps. Obviously, getting 12 wins helps, but
I mean, and they dominated the Big 12 championship. I think if they had just slightly won, I don't know,
would have been more of a not controversy, but more talked about.
No, I agree, and I think there could have been a conversation. I heard this where Georgia and Bama both got in over Texas if Texas doesn't have the win over Bama with the SEC bias. So I saw that mock and I was like, that's kind of tough, because Georgia they could be a top 4 team. That's still debatable, but I think Texas definitely belongs. They're playing good football. I wish they would have played Oklahoma in the Pac-12 championship, but
Big 12.
They got kind of a way easier game. Or Big 12.
Yeah, would have been able to redeem that loss earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously the Gibbons, Michigan, and UW. Sadly, UW's in it, but it's fine. It's fine.
They earned it.
They earned it, but I'm not happy about it. I don't need to be happy about it. So just remember who they almost lost to. So, so I think the top two were given. Michigan, obviously 13-0. They looked really good in the Big Ten championship. Very given. I mean, but on that winning streak, did Florida State get robbed? Going back here, let me paint the picture. So back in the day, before college football playoff, for some people who don't remember, there was something called the BCS. The BCS, in this day and age, I guarantee you, Bama would not, like if there was a 4-team playoff.
So I actually do follow this guy on Twitter who still does the BCS rankings if they were in place today.
Yeah.
And actually, what's funny is that they do put Bama in the top 4, but they kick out Texas.
Oh,
and Texas is at 5 in the BCS national championship rankings.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. I think there needs to be a debate about the BCS uses computers and therefore is trying to be more objective, while the committee is just humans. It is very subjective.
Absolutely.
And I mean, Florida State got absolutely robbed. I don't think we should ever let it go because honestly, I've never been a fan of the 4-team playoff. I'm still not a fan of the 12-team playoff either. I think 6 was always the better one, or the 8. So it's more like the NFL, where either top 2 get a bye or you have 8, and then It's just 4 and 4 on each side. But no, I mean, like we were talking about before, right before we started, Kirk Herbstreit said it before Jordan Travis's injury that if Florida State won out and Bama won the SEC championship game, who gets in? It's a question, right? So I think they're using the Jordan Travis injury as a excuse to make sure an SEC team is in there.
Gets in, yeah. No, I think it's an interesting question because, like you said, it is an excuse. They're saying, they're not the same team. They're down to the third string quarterback. And the thing I keep hearing, something I want to pose to you guys, they keep saying the best 4 teams. But yet
they're
I
ranked ahead of
swear
Georgia,
every year
right?
it changes. The criteria changes. So, I don't know. What do you think, Cade?
I think any other year, right? A 13-0 Florida State team winning out gets in. But of course, this is the only year where there might be that exception because like Cincinnati got in Power 5. If Florida State was undefeated that year, they get in. And it always seems like the 4th team is always a 2-loss team or a 1-loss team that barely gets in. This is the first year where they kind of want that expanded playoffs because it's just heartbreaking for them. I do think they got snubbed a little bit. And I also want to pose a question to you guys. I saw a thing where it said if Dion was coaching this Florida State team,
that.
would they get in? Would they get in? Because right now it also seems like a silver lining of money. They know Florida State would probably lose, and they don't want to put them in with the loss of money because Bama gets them a lot more revenue.
Or even better yet, not even Dion. Let's just say we'll switch coaches. Same situations, switch coaches. Who gets in?
Well, here's this, right? Yeah, I have Nick Saban. Yeah, no doubt. Think about the same conference. If Clemson was a 13-0 national champ with the exact same thing, and they were on their third string, Clemson is in. Why? Because they've had recent success of getting into the college football playoff,
proven
and
success.
people are used to it. The reason is because Florida State hasn't been good since Jameis Winston.
Yeah,
and people, the committee is not used to Florida State being that good, and so they got left off. I mean, and actually, there's another scenario, like not a fake scenario, but a real life scenario that happened where Ohio State won the national championship game with their third string quarterback.
Yep.
In the playoff era.
Yep.
Cardale Jones. Anybody remember Shotgun 12? Yep. It was a great story. I loved that. I thought Cardale Jones was going to be great in the NFL because of it. Because he started 4 games and suddenly was like a stud. Now Florida State quarterbacks, I mean, they would have had their backup instead of their third string for it. He never gets that opportunity. And I think that's kind of BS.
Yeah, and I think the subjectivity, it becomes a problem when you start basing it on past years. It's about this season. It's not about last season. It's not about the last 10 years. It's about this season. And if you want to talk about the best 4 teams, look at the teams with the best records and what they've proven this year. Yes, was Florida State down to their third string quarterback? Yes. Did they still find a way to be a ranked team? Let's not forget that, a ranked team in the ACC championship. They got it done.
A top 15 team, too. They're not barely ranked.
Their defense was elite through that game. They carried them through that game. Let's not forget that. Okay, everyone's discrediting all this teams, whatever. Sure, maybe Alabama right now is better than them, but they lost. Everyone knows the rules of the game. They lost one time this year, and Florida State didn't.
Yep.
So,
and here's the other thing too. If we're talking about best teams, where's Ohio State?
Yep.
Ohio State deserves to be in the conversation with Georgia and Bama. Their only loss is to Michigan by 6.
Yep.
Or was it by 3? It was 1 score.
Well,
at Michigan.
And what they're going to say about that is, well, they weren't even in a conference championship game. And it's like,
Doesn't matter, right?
that's not how the Big Ten is. That's not how it works. Like that's not how their criteria works. So I don't know if anyone has anything else to add, but
the Big Ten is changing their next season. They are changing it to just the top two, so you could get a Michigan, Ohio State.
Well, good.
I think because of this scenario of like Ohio State or Michigan always get robbed out of it, or Penn State even.
Yeah. All right. Does the SEC get too much credit? This might be an obvious question.
I think it is safe to say they get a little bit too much credit, but I mean, it is also hard to deny because they do have a lot of championships. I mean, Georgia back last 2 years, Bama multiple
LSU.
years. So like, it's easy to say that it's pretty biased when like an Alabama sneaks in at the end or something like that happens, but I think they deserve a lot of credit too. They are probably they are the best football conference, but I also think, like we said before, there's a lot of money on the line, right? So, and there's a lot of money in the South, so that's what gets them a lot of extra credit, maybe a little bit more deserving, but they do produce national champions year after year. So,
yep.
Don't get me wrong, the SEC over the past decade has been the best conference in the nation, but they're not the best this season. And everyone likes to look at actually the conference-to-conference matchups, which I think actually is warranted. I think that's fair. But honestly, the SEC and Big Ten had bad out-of-conference matchups against other conferences, so both of them have losing records. But the Big Ten, I think, is actually better this year than the SEC. I think Michigan is the number one ranked team, right? I think it's hard to debate whether Georgia or Alabama would beat Michigan. I think Ohio State's within that same realm. And if we go further down the list as well, like for some reason the committee has Missouri over Penn State. Penn State's only two losses are to Michigan and Ohio State. And they lost to Ohio State by 1 score, and they lost to Michigan by 9. Mm-hmm. Missouri's has lost to LSU, who's actually ranked below them, and they lost to Georgia by, I think, 2 scores, who's ranked lower than Michigan.
Yeah.
So I think and Penn State played good teams. They played an 8-4 West Virginia team in a non-conference game and won 38-15. Very solid win. They beat Iowa 31-0, just as well as Michigan just dominated Iowa. Mm-hmm. So I really do think actually if we're looking at the top 3 teams, I think the Big Ten is actually better this year than the SEC. I think the SEC is very deep, though. Yeah. Like you look at A&M, you look at Auburn, you look at
LSU.
Well, LSU, yeah. Ole Miss. I mean, there's plenty of teams, but I'm talking about the teams that finished in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
That are actually pretty good teams, and probably don't deserve to finish 7-5, but did. So, SEC's deep. Just the top of the top is not like above everyone else, like it has been. So.
Well, I like the answers. I'm not going to comment on this just because I haven't followed it as closely as I would have liked, but I will say it does feel like we are measuring a little bit too much on the past and not this season. All right. Final question about college until we hop into the NFL. Does the 12-team playoff save this debate? Or do we just keep having these arguments at number 12 and 11 and 10?
I think we keep having these arguments.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry,
I think you have the arguments, but I don't think they're as big of an attention grabber as like the 4 or 5, 5th best team. It's like the 12th, the 11th 14th, 13th. Like, it's not that big of a snub because those teams probably aren't going to win the championship anyway. But there could be a chance where the fifth best team could get into the 14 playoff, and they could have won it that year, but they got left out. I also think 12 teams is a little bit too much, in my opinion. I think 6 to 8 is the better number. 6, so the top 2 seeds get a bye. 8's still fine with me because the 1 seed probably smokes the 8, but I don't. You're going to still have arguments, no matter how big you made a playoff.
Yeah, very true. I also think with the 4, debates are higher because the stakes are higher. Only 4 teams get in. That's it. 12, it's like, yeah, thank God I'm in. But it's like, now I got to go play freaking the 1 seed Michigan, or now I got to go play like whoever, insert the best team that year, So it's like, at least with the top 4, it's usually like any one of those teams. Usually, not all the time, usually any one of those 4 teams can win a championship.
Yeah, I think the 12-team playoff, like you said, I'm not going to restate it, slightly saves it. I do think you still have problems because Oklahoma would have been left out this year. And Liberty would have gotten in because for some reason in the 12-team playoff, we're going to give a group of 5 an automatic bid. I hate to say it, but if a group of 5 is not deserving, they shouldn't be in. Yeah. There's the top 12 will make it. So, and there have been plenty of group of 5 teams that have been ranked in the top 12. Get ranked in the top 12. If Liberty would have dominated every single game this season, they would be ranked in the top 12, but they're not.
Yeah.
So I will say that I think 12 teams is way too much because LSU is not going to win a championship this season. Penn State is not going to win a championship this season. Ole Miss is not going to. Missouri's not going to. But all those teams would make playoff. And I remember when they first expanded this too, they were talking about player injuries. It was becoming a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, well, we're just adding more games to these players.
Yeah, you're not helping that case.
It's becoming an NFL schedule of 17 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. So, yeah, I think 6 or 8 would have been the perfect number because I think 8 this season you would have had a Michigan versus Oregon matchup, I think is the 1 versus 8, and that's a good matchup. Do I think Oregon is capable of winning a championship this season? No. But I think the top 6 would be perfect.
Yeah.
I also think that if it were the top 6, they would have kicked Florida State out of the top 6. I think
I will say this.
We'll
say this though. From a money standpoint, this is huge for college football.
Oh.
People will eat this shit up. Are you kidding me? You want to talk about grab your popcorn? Holy shit, brother. People will eat this shit up. This is what are they going to call it now? Like freaking Nut November? Because I mean, when are they going to start these games? Because they're going to be great. Everyone's going to be watching these. Like, yeah. People will tune into this. Everyone's saying, "Oh, I don't want to watch college football with all the committee shit and all that." People will watch this. So
as much as I
think it's a smart move from a business standpoint. But what's up?
As much as I dislike the 12-team playoff, it is set up for money galore because I know I'll watch it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it's going to be entertaining because there's going to be some upsets.
And there's good teams.
It's bound to happen. In 12 teams, there's going to be 1 or 2 upsets. Someone's going to make a run.
There was one last thing I wanted to bring up on the last question as well.
Yeah.
With all the conference realignment, only 1 team in the top 12 won't be from the Big Ten or SEC next year. And that was Florida State. Everyone else in the top 12 will be in the Big Ten or in the SEC. Just kind of crazy to think about.
They're coming back, folks.